And hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at resolutions in texture. The idea here being to reduce the amount of processing power that your computer needs to do to be able to produce any of these particular textures. So let's go into it real quick. First thing to do to be able to actually see where your textures are, that if you go underneath lit, or where you would get the different view modes. One of the view modes is optimization view mode, and if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we get acquire texture resolutions. And what that will do is it will seem to turn everything dark except for the one thing that you have highlighted. Now, the thing that you have highlighted, if you'll notice up here at the top of the viewer, is you get an extra box now that says textures scene selection. So if we click on that, we actually get a list of all the textures that are part of this Asian temple. So if we go into them, we'll click on the first one, and you'll see that we get anything that has that texture will then have like either a red, a yellow, a white, a bluish green, and then an undefined. So if we scroll out, we'll actually see that multiple textures, or there's multiple things in this environment that actually use that texture. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I do have a few things up here that also use that same texture. So we can actually look through the entire level and see if we have anything that has that same texture. And we have one down there too. Okay, so with that said, if we move away from the texture, you'll see that it stays that green. Now what we're basically seeing down here is, if you read it, it says show the ratio between the currently steamed texture resolution and the resolution wanted by the graphics, or by the user graphics card, or the graphic processing unit. GPU, graphic processing unit. That would be your video card inside your computer. So these things may change depending on how big your GPU is. So if I'm looking at this, if I start slowly going into it, you'll see that it goes into this lighter blue. And let me slow down my camera just a little bit so we don't overshoot it. And there we're going into a white, and if we get closer, we're going into a yellow, and then into a red. Now, what this is doing is it's letting us know what this texture is going to look like as far away as we are from it. So the further away we are from it, the more natural the texture will look. The closer we get to it, the more blurry the texture will look. Now, not necessarily here, but in the way that we actually play when we play the game. Now, the importance of this is there may be some textures that you're going to be very close to. And if that's the case, you're going to want them to stay either in the white, the blue, or the green, depending on how far away your character is going to be. So like this texture here, if I was to be standing on the texture like I would if I was the character, you would see that the texture should, for the most part, be exactly as I expect it to be. Now imagine that you had this texture and your camera was going to be, let's say, this far away from it, and you would never get this close to that texture. You would never get that close to the texture. So one of the things you can do is you can actually reduce the resolution of that texture, so then that way it will take less processing power. So if you're not going to be getting close to this thing, there's no reason for it to be at super duper max resolution. We can actually drop the resolution. Now to do that, what we need to do is we need to see which one of the textures we're on. So we'll see that we are on T Asian Floor 1D. And if I scroll over here to the side, since I do have the Asian Temple selected, we can see that we also have one called, where is it? Asian Floor... There it is, Asian Floor 01. So this should be that texture. So what we'll do is we'll double click on that texture and we'll open that up. And inside the texture, we're going to see two things. We're going to see the one texture, which is the actual the coloring and the colors that we get from the texture. That's going to be the top one. And then the UV one is going to be the one that creates all the the darker lines and the definition and what creates a little bit more depth. Okay, so let's click on the first one and let's go to that one and let's double click on the material itself. Now when you open up the material itself, I've already done some tinkering over here, so I'm actually going to put that back. What you should see is a very nice, very well defined floor. You can see every little nook and cranny and crack that's in that texture. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to look over here in the details panel and I'm going to see what the import size was. So this is 1024 by 1024 is the size of this, and this is how much resources it's taking up. And what we want to do is we actually want to reduce the texture. So right now there is no max texture size. So let's go ahead and add in a max texture size. And this is all going to be using binary information. So you'll see that the numbers up here is 1024. So if you take an 8-bit system and you multiply 8 times 8, you get the 32, so then you get 64, then you would get 128, then you would get 512, then you would get 1024, then you would get 2000, I think it's 48. Yes, I believe it's 2048. So if I come over here in the number box and I type in 8, I actually will get a value, and you'll see that the thing has gotten really tiny and that I have to scroll all the way in, and let's go scale to fit, and you'll see that we have lost all definition. This now would take a lot less space in the computer, and every time it had to regenerate this, we would get a lot less space. Now also, if we come here, we'll see that this texture is now super red. No matter how far away we get from it, I mean, we would have to literally be, you can kind of see the ones in the background now are starting to get good, but I mean, at this definition, yeah, you're barely seeing those things. So it is saving the computer a lot of resource and power by not having to draw those in quite as well because they are that far away. So let's go back to our texture, and if I'm, whoops, let's go back to, sorry, okay, so let's go back to this, let's go back to the floor, and let's go back to our texture, and let's go back and open it up, and this time let's go from 18, let's go to 16, which would be a 16-bit system. So you can see we're getting a little bit better definition. Let's go to 128, or actually from 16 we would go to 32. We're getting a little bit better. Notice that if I try to type in 33, it doesn't. It just goes to the next highest value, right? So I'll do that again. Let's type in, let's say 35, and it takes me automatically to 64. So there really is no way to do this unless you're using those. So let's go 128. And you're starting to see that this is looking better. So let's move that out. And you can see now that our Asian temple, if we were at least this far away, those textures would be coming in the way they're supposed to look. You can see that the ones back here, now because they're even further away, are in much better shape because visually we wouldn't be able to see that level of definition or that level of detail. Okay, so let's increase that even more. So let's go from 128, let's go to 256. Okay, a little bit better definition. Let's check and see what our temple looks like. Let's see how close we can get to it. So with this one, we could actually be rather close. So maybe you're on a walkway and this is an area that's off to the side where you're not seeing, or you're never going to be able to get close enough to that texture to be able to see any better definition than that. So again, we'll go from this to 512. Okay, we get a lot of really good definition, so let's go and see what that looks like. And with this one, we could almost walk on it. You can see that if I looked down, we would get a lot of blurriness. The further I look away, this would look fine. So let's actually go ahead and push play. And I'm going to have to move my player character because he's not anywhere near where I can actually do something with this. So let's move our player character from where they are. And we may not, there we go. And we're probably going to have to get out of this. So let's go back to lit. Let's move this guy down.
I just realized there's not a way for me to get up on that temple, so let's put a pair of stairs there. And let's go to geometry, let's put a pair of linear steps there. And let's make them tall enough so we can actually get on them. Okay, and then let's move that out so we can actually get up there. Alright, so now we
done that. Let's go ahead and hit save, and I'm going to walk up there and see what that texture looks like. Let's push play. Okay, so you can see that that looks fairly well. I'm not seeing too much distortion or anything like that. So let's go back and so at 512 that was actually pretty good. Let's knock that down back to the let's go to 256 so you can see that we get some blurriness there. And let's go ahead and push play and let's see how much blurrier that is. Okay, so we can see that we're losing definition. It's not terrible yet, and at this distance we would probably be okay. Let's go and see what that looks like underneath our visibility. So we're going to go to optimization view. We're going to scroll down to required text viewer. We're going to click on this guy. Let's go back to the floor. Okay, let's drop that down to 128. Way blurrier. Let's hit save. Okay, let's now push play. And let's see how much blurrier that looks. So we can see that that is considerably blurrier. Now from this far away, it looks fine. Everything looks okay. But the second we get close enough to it, to where we can see some texture, we're starting to see some texture go away. So that really in a nutshell is how you would do it. So we'll look at the whole process one more time. So normally you're in lit. We're going to go down to optimize view mode, required texture resolution, select an item, go into its individual textures. Remember that we have to select one so that way we can see what it's going to be like. The more it is to the green, the more that texture is going to come in looking full resolution from the distance that you're at. The more it goes red, the less likely and the more blurrier it's going to be. Once you've decided which texture you're looking at, so we could, let's say, click on a different texture. So now it's going to show us, let's say, the roof. And maybe the roof you're never going to stand on, so that doesn't necessarily need to have super high texture, or the resolution needs to be 100% at the very biggest. Now, that being said, I do have a temple complex up there at the top that does have roofs where you could get on, so unfortunately I wouldn't be able to do that with this particular texture. But again, those are the decisions that you make, is how much texture am I going to give it, how much resolution can I take out of it with it still looking correct, based on how far away my character is actually going to be able to get to the unit, and to make changes. So this one, again, this one was called Asian Roof. So let's go to Asia Roof, and if we click there, we would get into the material. We could double click on the material, double click down here to get into the material, and then from there start reducing the resolution. So, and remember, in units of 8. Okay, so let's say we like that. We click OK. We scroll back and we'll see that we now have a roof that has lower texture. If we were very close to the roof, we would start to see blurriness. If we're further away, or if we, let's say we were at this distance, we would look okay. It would look good. We'd start to see distortion. Okay, so hopefully that's going to help some of you guys get your project streamlined and make it a little bit easier for your computer based on which one of the computers you're, depending on the graphics card that your computer might have, to alleviate some of the stress on your computer, so that way it's not belching everything out at super high quality. Okay, so hope you found this video tutorial useful, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.